We're on record. Lovely. So, if you could just turn to the person next to you or in your group, you've got 1 minute to discuss the top 10 takeaways in Britain. Okay, top 10 takeaways in Britain. You've got 1 minute. Your time starts right now. Seconds left. Last 30 seconds.
Fish and chips. Sometimes. Burger King.
I'd say fish and chips.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So this is the top 10 according to, I think it was called, I can't even remember the name of the magazine now. Oh, it's a shame. Anyway, so according to a magazine, so I haven't made it up, right? So here we go. Number 10 is Italian food. So Italian food? Jorge's rubbing his belly there. Oh, it's not popular with everybody. I can see that in the background. Let's move on then. So that's number 10. Number 9 is sushi. You like that? Oh no. Oh, fish are friends, not food. But there we are. It's coming in at number 9. You know, it is what it is. Number 8 is a burger. Get a burger. Yeah? My daughter Faye, she's on the Guildford campus, and she says there's Uber Eats flinging back all the time, taking Burger Kings and McDonald's and stuff like that. Bonkers. So there we are. So that's number 8. Number 7, Thai food. Came in number 7. Anybody a fan of Thai food? Love a bit of Thai food. You can't have a bit of spice, but oh yeah, a bit of Thai green curry. I like that. Here we go. Number 6 is a kebab.
Is that kebab?
Kebab, well, some kebab.
Kebab.
Yeah, well, can't fault a bit of kebab action. Lovely. Here we go. I think this is number 5, I think, which is KFC or Southern Fried Chicken.
That's what I had for dinner last night. I ordered my KFC to be delivered after.
KFC, the most disappointing takeaway I've ever had in my life, KFC. But that's another story. We haven't got time for that. There are other places out there you can eat. Okay, the next one then is pizza. Pizza fans? Yeah, we like a bit of pizza. All right then. So I think we're on to the big money stuff. The top 3 is in the honourable mention next. Honourable mention because the next one didn't actually make the list, but if I made the list, it would. Mexican food. I love a bit of Mexican food, and Chloe does bang in Mexican food. So whenever it's Father's Day or my birthday, they tend to do a bit of Mexican in my house. It's fantastic. Loves it. Okay, so top 3 now. This is the big money stuff. Top 3. Number 3 is fish and chips. It's an absolute classic. Jorge's not fussed on that at all. He's not happy. It's the best British have to offer, fish and chips, isn't it? It can be fish, yeah. It's quite dear, yeah.
I love going to the chip shop and having a nice fresh.
Absolutely. So as much as I say fresh your friends, not food, unless it's from a chippy. That is the caveat, okay? So I will eat it then. My hypocrisy knows no bounds. Number 2 is an Indian meal. Indian food. What about an Indian food? Is that like KFC last night? Indian tonight? And number 1, here we go, top of the shop.
Chinese.
You called it Chinese food. There it is. So there we are. That is the top 10 British takeaways. So we'll see how this relates to it in just a second. So can we have my PowerPoint one? Lovely, fantastic. So from the year 2000 until 2010, I worked on a project called the Gap Project, and it was part of Cornerstone Church's community project. So the way that project would work is that we would take some of the naughtiest boys or girls of Swansea, and we would take them to our project, and we would do outdoor activities with them, like gorge walking, surfing, canoeing, kayaking, all of that kind of stuff, and we do some indoor stuff as well. But it meant that we rolled around in a big van, the Gap bus, right? Ordinarily, I didn't get to drive the Gap bus because my mate Tim, who ran the whole project, the big boss man himself, he got a bit travel sick, do you know what I mean? So he liked to drive the bus. So it was a rare occasion that I got to drive it. But this one time, we were heading towards Llanelli because we were going to go to Pembrey to do some orienteering, and I got to drive the bus. So we pulled into the petrol station so we could fill up, and I filled the bus up as full as I can, because I wanted the club card points, do you know what I mean? Because points mean prizes, don't they? So I filled the bus up as full as it could be, full as an egg. Get in the bus, start driving off, we drive off the forecourt, and then ka-choo, ka-choo, like that. The bus was like a kangaroo. I'd only put petrol in a diesel bus. We were stranded. I've only made that mistake once, Les. I haven't made it since then, alright? We were stranded. It was me, 2 other instructors, and 12 of some of the naughtier boys of Swansea. We were all stranded at Les. We had to phone people to pick us up in their cars. So the bus was full of fuel, absolutely ram-jam full of fuel, but it was the wrong fuel. Yeah? And today we're talking about what we are fueling ourselves with. So 2 weeks ago, Charlotte did a great talk on exercise. Last week then I talked about hygiene, because once you've done some exercise, you want to cleanse yourself up. And then after that, it's important to refuel. So that's what we're talking about today. So, despite the food that we put in us, can you make yourself feel a bit sluggish, a bit tired, a bit kind of lethargic? Do you know what I mean? And the worst case scenario, the food that we put in us can cause us to break down, right? If we really think about it that way. Now me, I love eating. Love it. Love eating, right? When I was a teenager, I would wake up in the morning and I would deliver papers in the morning, every morning, and then I would have a bowl of cereal followed by 2 slices of bacon and 2 pieces of toast every morning. And that saw me through my teenage years. And then when I did my year out for God, I did a year out with playing in a band when I was down in Surrey. I shared a house with other guys who played in the band with me. They would wake up in the morning to the smell of bacon that I was cooking for myself. Do you know what I mean? So even then, I had a reputation then of just eating. I can eat a lot. So when the guy who led our particular group down in Surrey, he went and did a trip to Canada and bought some chocolate back for us each and had some kind of like prophetic meaning or whatever. Mine was called Eat More. So I love eating, and eating is like an important part of our family. If you had a casual scroll through my Facebook this week, you'll have seen that it was Lily's birthday on Thursday night, which meant that we had a takeaway, which was an Indian, which was lovely, but I was rammed. And then we went to pick up Faye on Friday, and Faye booked us into a brand new restaurant in Guildford, which was lovely, so I was rammed. And then last night, my dad did his kind of royal visit. He took us out for food, and once again, I was rammed. And he took us out for breakfast this morning as well. And not only that, tomorrow I'm going on a holiday, and it's all inclusive. Tell you what. But the question is, what food are we putting in our bodies, right? Because I did a little fact check of the book of Genesis, and there were no Tesco's or any other, there are other supermarkets available. There were no supermarkets, there were no corner shops, there were no takeaways, there were no Uber Eats. If they were going to eat in those days, they had to grow it or catch it, yeah? So, are you familiar with the phrase, you are what you eat? Yeah? Everybody heard that before? Yeah. Anybody question where it ever came from?
There used to be a program, You Are What You Eat.
Yeah, there was a program on TV. So when I was Googling the phrase, you are what you eat, that came up a lot. But where it actually came from is, you are what you eat and drink, I'll put that as well. Who said it? It was Jean-Antoine Billiat-Savarin. It originally appeared, thank you. Well, you wait for the French. It originally appeared in 1826 when Jean-Antoine Billiat-Savarin, a French lawyer, politician and famous gastronome, wrote, "Dis-moi ce que de manger, je te dirai ce que tu aimes," which translates means, tell me what you eat and I will tell you what you are. So we are the sum total of what we eat, right? Some foods are going to be really good for you, some foods not so good. You can be full of fuel, but is it the right fuel? Now there's another phrase, and Cy Bates used to say this, you can't outrun a bad diet, right? So you can do as much exercise as you want, but if you put in the wrong fuel inside you, you compensate for it. So the statistic on here says 1,300 calories, you can eat that in 20 minutes, right? And that would equate to having to run a half marathon, which for a lot of people would be 2 hours and 10 minutes of running. 2 hours and 10 minutes. Now, the meal we went for last night was huge, wasn't it, Chloe? To be fair, it was huge. And it wasn't even the one on the menu that said, warning, massive. So there was an even bigger meal on the menu. It was massive, do you know what I mean? But for that, you'd have to run that far. Now, when I was 17, I was in Neath College. You'd have like a half day on a Wednesday where you could do all kinds of sport and stuff. So I would go to Neath Gym, because at the time, as a 17-year-old, you're always trying to kind of bulk up like I do. And there was a fella there in the gym, and he came out with a statistic that said, for every half a pint you drink, you need to run 3 miles to burn it off. And of course, like the male bravado of how much you can drink. So he's like, so I'd have to run a marathon every weekend, I would, really. So as if it's a really clever thing. But it's important to think about what we put in our bodies. And the reason why I said there, you are what you eat and drink, is because alcohol does play a factor, or, you know, fizzy drinks or whatever, like, do you mean pop? Yeah, we call it pop down here in Wales. When Faye referred to it as pop in Guildford, they're like, you what? Pop. And they laughed at it, but it's a Welsh thing, and I'm proud of it. So, but you are what you eat. And CVM, which I love, the president of CVM decided that alcohol wasn't kind of doing it for him anymore, and he's not his best, sharpest self, so he decided he's not going to drink anymore. And he's got the last time he took a drink tattooed on his arm. And he started this kind of movement called Sober Leader for fellas who are, well, not just fellas, anybody who's interested in maybe exploring, trying to cut back on drink or go teetotal, like, you know. So it's a bit of a movement going on, which is fantastic. So it's what you eat and what you drink. So that's a few kind of worldly phrases about you can't run a bad diet and you are what you eat. But let's have a look at the Bible. So in the Old Testament, God said some foods were unclean and other foods were clean. So some foods you could eat and some foods were off limits. And then in the New Testament, anybody remember the character who had the vision?
That's Peter.
Oh, look at the scholar at the back of there. Yes, Hannah. It was in Acts chapter 10. Peter had a vision from the Lord. He had the same vision 3 times where there was like a blanket laid down and with animals on it. God said, go and eat. So God is saying to us, we can eat anything, right? Everything is okay for us, right? But then it kind of brought me to this next verse, which is one of Paul's. And Paul says this in the letter to the church in Corinth. He says, everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. Now, to put it into context, because, you know, if anybody's out there watching, the verse is actually relating to sexual immorality, because that was rife within the church there in Corinth. The believers found faith, they found freedom in Jesus, they realised they weren't under the law anymore, and then they were taking advantage of that freedom and using it for, you know, well, sex, frivolous life, I guess, really. But this also, I feel, kind of applies to our topic today, is that everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Yeah? And I won't be mastered by anything at all. So, realistically, can you say no to some foods? Or if it's offered to you, it's like, oh, I can't help myself, and I'm gonna, because that's the test, like, you know. Or something else that I try to do to master myself when it comes to food and that is, you know, if you've got a buffet, I will on purpose try to hold back and let everybody else go first. So just as a kind of a practice, like, you know. And if you're left with nothing, like on a Friday at Jack Lewis, you're left with nothing. But there we go. So Paul said this in 1 Corinthians 6. Everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. And everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. So we're called to be the master of our own bodies. A couple of chapters later, he said something very, very similar. In 1 Corinthians 10, verse 23, he says, everything is permissible, but not everything is good or beneficial. Right? And to put this in context, it was about food that people were eating. Some people were eating food that had been sacrificed to idols, and other people were like, I can't do that, I can't do it, you know. And Paul was, you know, encouraging them not to have judgment on either way. But in the same way, again, I think that this kind of relates to us, is that we can eat anything at all, but is it good for us, necessarily? Is it beneficial? Is it building up our bodies? Because we had a verse the other week about how, you know, our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, so we're to honour God with our bodies, and we can use it to, you know, for license, really, to do what we want. Because I love takeaways. I love them. And I love eating out. And eating together is a big thing in our family. It's something that we've always done. So when the kids were small, myself and Sarah made an agreement that one of us would stay home and look after the kids, and the other one would work. So as it happened, Sarah did the kind of staying at home, and I got to work, and then she would cook food every night for about 6 o'clock, so we could always sit down and eat together. And that's a tradition that we've always had as a family. And years ago, my kids would kind of ask the question, what's your favourite room in the house? And they all said the dining table, because that's where we sit together and commune. So eating is really important, and we love it. And me and Sarah, when we have date nights together, it tends to be going out for food. Just because it's an easy thing to do, you're going to eat, you know, and all of that. But, you know, when you have takeaways and stuff like that, A, it's super expensive, if we're honest, and B, it's not necessarily good for you either, like, you know. I mean, I love a Chinese, but man alive, it makes me thirsty. You know, put MSG and stuff like that in it. I find myself waking up in the middle of the night, having to have loads and loads of water, because I feel so thirsty, you know? So as much as I love a takeaway, and I do, I love it, it's not always the best thing, yeah? And like I say, it's super, super expensive. So, how do we know how to eat well? Well, fortunately, there's something called the Eat Well plate, right? And you can Google this, and it will tell you there all the kind of the makeup of what your plate should consume of. So, the massive green over there is fruit and vegetables. It's a really big chunk of it is fruit and veg. Because again, going back to Genesis, you either had to grow it or catch it, yeah? So catching it is a lot harder than growing it. Henceforth, the kind of the pink bit there is your proteins. That's the bit you're trying to catch. Catching your fish, catching prey, whatever. It's a lot harder than, you know. So my question is, are we eating lots of fruit and veg? Yeah? Because you know, like the government say they aim for 5. 5 is supposed to be the minimum that we eat, believe it or not. You know, I think it's a good day when I've reached 5, and I feel pretty good about myself. But that should be the minimum. So, because I'm tight as a drum as well, I'm a packed lunch boy, and I have been for donkey's years. So, in any job I've ever had, I've always taken a packed lunch. Why? Because I can take fruit with me. Why fruit? Because I don't have to cook it. I literally have to peel it, and it's down my mouth, like, you know, super quick, and it's super, super good for you. So, in terms of that, massive lots of fruit and veg. All this yellow bit here are your carbs. Now, some people are anti-carbs. Oh, I can't eat carbs, blah, blah, blah. But you need carbs. They are an important part of your diet, yeah? But the massive part of it is your fruit and veg. And then the blue here is the dietary alternatives. And then the tiny bit of purple is your oil and spreads. And we're not really supposed to eat any food like with lots of sugar and stuff like that in it. Which is the bit that we really like. Which is the bit when you get to the end of the checkout, and it's there. Which is when you get to the pay for your petrol, and it's like a whole row of it right there. Do you know what I mean? So, what are we putting in our bodies? So you might say to me, but Byron, I don't know how to cook. Well, when we decided it was time for Sarah to maybe get out there and do some paid work, I started learning to cook. Chloe, you got me this? Jamie's 15-minute meals. Now, don't believe what the title says on the cover, because if you're not used to cooking, it takes a lot longer than 15 minutes, let me tell you. It's about 45. And I made some right idiot mistakes. It said, like, half the beans. So you kind of, like, put half over there and half over there. But I didn't really mean cut it in half, like, you know. But there's some banging recipes in here, and it's really, really nice. I mean, the only problem is sometimes it's quite rare in terms of the ingredients that you use. And you know, you have to use them a lot to get your money's worth, but it's really, really good, so you can follow recipes, like, you know. Go online, there's loads out there. Or, you might be blessed enough to have a cookbook with your name on it. Look at that. Yes, indeed. Byron burgers. 2 of my favourite things, Byron and burgers. So, banging. Yeah, get a cookbook or something and learn how to cook. And if you don't know, then let us know. We can try and get you on some kind of cooking courses. Or, even when in-house, maybe we can do like some cooking demonstrations for one another of your favourite dishes, like, you know, we can learn together. Because eating out, A, is super expensive, and B, you don't know what's in it, like, you know. So research some food, right? I did a bit of research on food, and now as a result, I try to chuck this kind of wonder stuff in every meal if I can. In our house, I refer to it affectionately as gubbins. My kids don't refer to it as gubbins, affectionately, because they don't like it, but I do, right? So, we got garlic in the top of there, ginger there, chilies and onions. Now if I'm doing a spag bol or if I'm doing a curry, I will try and whack as many of those in as I can. Obviously not the ginger in a spag bol, right? Let me give you some reasons why you should stick garlic and stuff. And this is just garlic. It boosts your immune system, lowers your blood pressure, it lowers your cholesterol, it reduces your dementia risk, it extends your life and improves your athletic performance. That's just the garlic, let alone the ginger and the chilies, which is great for blood flow and stuff like that. So, don't I glow? I try to mash it up as small as I can so the kids can't, you know, realise it's there. So they're getting all this good stuff down them because it's really healthy and it's super good for you, like, you know. This is how sad I am. I will eat foods that I know that are good for me, even though I don't like them, because I know that they're good for me. And these are some of them. Bananas. I don't like bananas at all, but I'll try and eat one of them a day, because I know it's super good for you. You know, like if it's a bit kind of mashed or brown, and it makes me gag a bit, but literally you peel it and it's gone, you know? Don't have to cook it. Super good, and it's really, really high in vitamin B. Broccoli, another great one. It's so boring. You like broccoli, do you? Oh my gosh, it's boring. Oh. Sweet corn carrots, any way you want to get it down, but get it down
Or
here.
you can make cauliflower cheese.
Cauliflower cheese.
With broccoli and
There we are. Banging.
and cauliflower.
Fantastic. And that takes up a lot of on the eating wheel then, a lot of the green light, you mean, making it yourself. Excellent, that's what we're on about. Best broccoli I ever had, my brother-in-law made it, and it was cooked with ginger. Oh, that was banging. But broccoli, I can't stand it. Mushrooms down there. Anybody like mushrooms? You like mushrooms?
Yeah. Yummy.
Oh, but when I read that they're a superfood, again, I chop them up as small as you can, stick them in the spag bol so you can't taste them, but you're getting all the goodness from it, you know? Or the bottom left, sorry, pumpkin seeds. That's the new one for me. I never liked pumpkin seeds before, but being a man of a certain age, I'm concerned about my prostate going forward, and they're supposed to be super good at reducing your prostate, so you don't struggle going to the lav and that as you get older. So I eat 2 spoonfuls of that every morning in my cereal, right? And then the middle one, right? This is the hardest one for me because I'm teetotal. I hate drinking. It's not for me at all. I read somewhere that a little bit of red wine every day is really good for you. And if you read in I think it's one of the letters to Timothy that Paul wrote, he said, have some red wine for your stomach. 3 days running, I tried drinking that much red wine. Oh, I can't, and I give up. So the 4 on the outside I'll eat, but the red wine, no chance. Unless it's in a spag bol or something, I can't do it. Oh, and the other one, right? Turmeric. This is banging for arthritis, right? So I bought some of this with the intention of like spooning it and having a little bit every day. I haven't got around to that yet, but that was my thinking. So there's wonder foods out there that God has given us, He's created, and yet the easy thing to do often is go for the bag of crisps and the chocolate bar. There's this meme on Facebook that I like. It says, some people are desperately trying to get off like cocaine and heroin, and I'm just trying to get off the crisps. And that's me, actually. I eat a bag of crisps every day. So food, it's a big thing. We all need to eat, but we all need to eat well, right? And I'm just going to tie it into these last kind of few slides. 1 Corinthians 9 verses 24 to 27 says this. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Therefore run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beat in the air. But I discipline my body and I make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified. Yeah? So in 2006, I ran the London Marathon. I had no idea about the right foods to eat and stuff like that, apart from carbo loading. So before the marathon, you're supposed to eat loads of carbs now, right? Here, I've even brought my vest with me, a bit of evidence. Yeah. That's what I wore in 2006, still fits. So I didn't know anything about the right foods to eat. So much so that when I got there, I was wearing a pair of shorts to run in that didn't have a pocket. Now what you should be doing as you're running is eating as you go to refuel. Because what happens is when you reach about mile 21, you hit what runners call the wall. And what that is then is, anybody hit that before? Or felt it, yeah? Basically, all the glycogen stored in your body, all that fuel, you've burnt up. You've got nothing left, right? And that's carbs. So that's why you carb load. You try to eat as many carbs so you've got plenty of glycogen. So, and what I remember from that was I got to about mile 21, 22, and I was doing really well up to that point. I was on for and doing it under 4 hours, I was landed. But then the wall hit. And for most of London, you run through crowds and it's fantastic and they're cheering you on and you can run up to somebody and they give you like jelly babies or bits of orange and stuff like that. But around about mile 21, you run through a tunnel and there's nobody there. And all you can hear are footsteps, breathing and pain. Yeah? And it's just awful. But if you keep eating the right food, you won't hit the wall. You won't kind of want to stop, because everything within you is screaming to stop, but you kind of push yourself. So it's about putting the right stuff in you, right? Beating your body and making it your slave. Serious stuff in it, I beat my body and I make it my slave. So I'm not a slave to my body, because when we're doing body, soul, spirit at the minute, when you do like prayer and fasting, your body is screaming at you, you know, feed me, feed me. But you're deciding to say, no, I am the master over my body. And sometimes when I feel that hunger pan when I'm fasting, I will pray on purpose, God, I hunger and thirst for you more. I hunger and thirst for you more. And that's my desire. And if Sean was listening to this, when we did prayer and fasting before, Sean went to town then, we're really kind of studying lots of things on fasting. And I listened to a podcast fairly recently about fasting, and they said about 6 different types. And one of them is, if you fast for 5 days, your body naturally repairs itself, right? The thinking behind that is that in those days when you had to run and catch your own food or grow it and stuff, if you weren't catching and eating something after 5 days, your body assumes it's because there's something wrong and it will start to repair itself. So if you kind of deny yourself, your body will revigorate itself. So, just want to encourage you about taking control of your eating, of what you're eating, to think about what's going in you. You know, there's nothing wrong with feasting, it's good. But fasting's important as well, yeah? And I'll give this last verse, one of my favourites. This is the reason why we've been doing these kind of talks lately, is because we're all in it for the long haul. You know, we got that building over there for 30 years at least, right? We want to be going for as long as we can, running as hard as we can for as long as we can for Jesus. And one way to do that is to keep ourselves fit and healthy as best we can, right? It says here, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. If we're going to run, we need the right fuel. Yeah, because life is a marathon and not a sprint. So we need to be fueling ourselves in a good way. So like I say, this isn't supposed to be a condemnatory thing. The picture that we had a couple of weeks ago of the Brownlee brothers weren't helping the other one across the line, because he did the wall and the other one hadn't. Do you know what I mean? We're all helping each other across the line with this and encouraging one another. Yeah? So it's not about calling someone out when you see them eat a chocolate bar. And I'm not anticipating everybody having a salad on Tuesday night at the Red Lion. You know, that's not what it's about. But it is about us thinking about, what are we eating? Do we need to learn to cook? Do we need to get a cookbook? You know? Do we need to share some recipes? Whatever it takes. But we want to be storing up good things for ourselves, yeah? How does that sound, alright? Fab. Let me just pray then. And then, Chloe, have you got another song to finish or anything? Okay. Father God, we want to take your word seriously, Lord. You know, I read about how other religions, it was all about the spiritual is this and the spiritual is that and the physical is nothing. But in your word, Father, it's all inclusive. It's all one. We are physical, we are spiritual, and one affects the other. And I pray that we become more disciplined in what we eat, what we think about, what we drink. And I pray that in that way, Lord, that we would be sharper in you. And that we would be healthier in general, Lord, that we would be able to go the distance with you, Father. That we would run with perseverance. And we would shake off everything that holds us back. So, Father, if eating is an issue, Father God, I pray that we would maybe seek out help, maybe get counselling for, you know, how we think and feel about food and all that kind of stuff. But God, I pray that we would spur one another on. That we would encourage one another. Like when you're running a marathon, those people are on the sides and they're offering you stuff to keep you going. God, I pray that we'd be offering one another encouragement that keeps us going, that keeps us running the race, that keeps us in the race, and that helps us to win. So have your way, Lord. We want to surrender everything of ourselves to you, Lord. Our bodies, our souls, our spirits, that we would be completely yours in your precious name. Amen.